Hello, can you hear me well? Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for this important discussion on global perspectives on deepfakes. My name is Soyoung Park. I head of international cooperation focused on combating image-based sexual abuse and child sexual abuse material at KCSC, a media content regulator in the Republic of Korea. So today I have the privilege of moderating this session alongside some amazing colleagues in this field. Joining us are Tsitsi Matekaire from Equality Now, Dr. Silvia Semenzin from University Complutense in Madrid, and Barsha Chakraborty from Breakthrough India. So I will now invite each of our esteemed panelists to introduce themselves. Tsitsi, would you kindly begin first? Then we'll hear from Dr. Silvia, followed by Barsha. Thank you.
Yes, hi everyone. I'm Tsitsi Matekaire, and I'm the global lead for Equality Now's program to end sexual exploitation and abuse, and really honored to be part of this panel. Thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is Silvia Semenzin. I'm a researcher at the University Complutense of Madrid, expert on image-based sexual abuse and gender-based violence and platform affordances. I'm very happy to be here. So thank you for the invitation.
Hi everyone, I am Barsha. I am joining from New Delhi. I work with Breakthrough Trust as a deputy director, lead all the digital programs and partnerships. Excited to be in the panel.
Thank you, everyone. So for context, let's begin today's session by addressing a recent deepfake incident that likely caught the attention of many. So in January 2024, fake pornography generated by AI featuring Taylor Swift likeness spread rapidly across the internet. This event not only shocked the world, but also served as a wake-up call, raising awareness about the potential dangers of AI-generated imagery for those who may not have previously recognized it as a threat. The incident involving Taylor Swift was outrageous and horrific, but sadly, history has shown us that sometimes such shocking events are necessary to bring change, as was evident in South Korea back in 2020. So during that year, South Korea faced a financial online sextortion case known as the Antrim case that took place on an encrypted messaging app, Telegram. This case represented modern slavery in the digital space and regrettably showed an excellent example of a woman being exploited with misused technology. So with at least 74 victims, including underage girls, this crime led to significant legal reforms in Korea, increased regulation, and the establishment of systems to better address such crimes. So since 2020, Korea has adopted the term digital sex crime content more officially and more publicly to encompass all forms of technology facilitated gender-based online sexual harassment and abuse. And KCSC has taken proactive measures, establishing a system to review such content within 24 hours and enforce takedowns from platforms. Moreover, IT companies operating in Korea of a certain size are now obliged to implement KCSC's hash database to prevent the recirculation and redistribution of already flagged abusive content by KCSC. But despite having language, law, regulations, systems in place, Korea's efforts are limited by the borderless nature of the internet. Bad actors now exploit foreign servers or VPNs to evade domestic regulations, perpetuating these crimes, and proliferation of advanced AI technology and easily accessible deepfake designing apps only worsen the issue, making deepfake abuse more widespread and affordable. So the reality of this situation, excuse me, is clear in the numbers. In 2020, KCSC reviewed and requested takedowns on 473 deepfake content. By 2023, this number had skyrocketed to 7,187 cases, showing a 60% increase in just 4 years. So now, let's welcome our distinguished panelists today and gain insights into the global landscape regarding, this problem, regarding legal frameworks to address deepfake image-based sexual abuse. So it's my pleasure to reintroduce Tsitsi Matekaire from Equality Now, who will provide an in-depth analysis of deepfake trends across 10 jurisdictions. Tsitsi will share key findings and offer maybe recommendations on legal approaches. Tsitsi, we eagerly await your insights. The floor is yours.
Thanks so much, Soyoung. So I'm just going to talk a little bit more about the research that Equality Now and the Alliance for Universal Digital Rights, ORDER in short, that we conducted last year and published initial results early this year. And this legal research was really to help us to understand the legal landscape at the international level, as well as in 10 jurisdictions. So laws relating to the use of AI in digitally altering images in image-based sexual abuse. We also received support from an international law firm, Hogan Levels, that essentially looked across 100 pieces of legislation in these 10 jurisdictions, which were, we looked at international human rights law, the European Union, England and Wales, Scotland, Australia, New Zealand, South Africa, Kenya, Nigeria, and the US, where we focus particularly on 3 states, Virginia, Texas, and California. In the first instance, we were working with the understanding that deepfakes are a global problem. So although I think what we see a lot in the media, maybe more of the international media, is stories coming out of the US, the UK, we've heard about Korea just now, and Australia. But just to emphasize that even though this issue is more understood perhaps by the public within these countries, actually that these violations are taking place as well in other countries. In Africa, for instance, I think one of the challenges is that deepfakes are probably not as well understood by the public. So I'll just give an example of a survey that was carried out across 5 African countries with respondent numbers around 800 people between the ages of 15 and 49 in Botswana, Egypt, Kenya, South Africa, and Mauritius. And what one of the finding was that just over 50% of respondents were aware of deepfakes, while 48% were unsure or had very little understanding of what they were. And when shown communication via email or direct message or a photo or a video, 74% of respondents believed that communication or image was true when in fact it was a deep fake. So just to show, that perhaps there's more to do in terms of public awareness around some of these issues in other parts of the world. So why the legal research? At Equality Now, we really believe in the power of the law to bring about systemic change for women and girls. We believe that the law, establishes the standard of behavior for both citizens and the state and the private sector as well. It brings out very clearly what the responsibility and accountability of governments and citizens and other actors should be. And particularly in the context of women's rights and protection from gender-based violence, we really believe that survivor-centered laws that are grounded in intersectional feminist analysis and a human rights-based approach are really critical to the holistic solutions that we need around preventing image-based abuse in general, including deepfakes, and also ensuring that there is adequate and proper support for survivors that experience these forms of abuse. So some of the key findings from our research, we started off by looking at the international legal landscape, and there's quite a lot in terms of the right to protection of one's image, which is really seen as, you know, one of the essential components of personal development, and really presupposes that everyone has that right to control the use of their images. And we see, for instance, in Article 8 of the European Convention on Human Rights, it implies that in jurisdictions where image rights are protected, the use of one's image for the creation and dissemination of deepfakes would then be deemed unlawful. When we look more closely at international law relating to women, we looked at the CEDAW General Comment number 35 that talks about gender-based violence. And within that, with the understanding that, you know, governments have a responsibility to put in place laws to address gender-based violence. So if you come with the understanding that deepfakes, image-based abuse is a form of gender-based violence, you could conclude that CEDAW would cover this form of violence, and that governments that have ratified CEDAW would be mandated to put in place legislative and other measures against it. But I think, as we know, that this understanding of international treaties and international human rights law sometimes doesn't necessarily become reflected in national legislation. So across the 10 jurisdictions that we looked at, I'll just give a very quick summary. We saw that the EU has taken a much more proactive approach. A number of laws, you know, that could potentially apply. The proposed Artificial Intelligence Act, the proposed as well, the EU Directive on Combating Violence Against Women and Domestic Violence. We've got the new EU AI Act now, the GDPR and so on. But I think the real test will be in testing out the extent to which these laws will apply and actually, you know, protect women. A lot of them still knew the EU AI Act, for instance. So I think the proof will be in the implementation. We saw as well that in the US, you know, as people may already know, that there's no federal law that provides for deepfakes. However, there are a number of states that have legislation. We see countries such as Australia, South Africa, and more recently the UK having some provisions around criminalizing the sharing of altered or digital images. But I think otherwise, on a general scale, we see that most of the countries don't really have robust laws that are designed specifically to address deepfake image-based abuse, and that in many cases, victims would have to rely on a patchwork of laws in other areas, such as those relating to copyright, to privacy laws. But we know that, you know, some of those laws are quite difficult to apply in practice. So this gap in legislation then provides that sort of enabling environment for perpetrators, you know, to continue to commit these offenses undiscovered or unpunished. And the situation is even made worse maybe by the general lack of legal accountability governing the tech sector, which currently does not have necessarily to ensure a safety by design approach at the coding or creation stage. And again, a focus, you know, what we've seen, like this particular focus on criminal sanctions means that perhaps we are not tackling, or that these laws are not tackling the problem holistically, and therefore may not be as effective. And I think we really have to address the problem upstream. So looking at, you know, where is it coming from, take accountability, rather than just looking at the end user, just thinking as well about the scale of the problem and the fact that, you know, perpetrators are also located across multiple jurisdictions. And I think that's a key point, that because of the nature of the internet, we are really dealing with multi-jurisdictional violations. Perpetrators are largely anonymous and can abuse women globally. So it's not good enough to have legal protections in one country where the perpetrator could be potentially in another country. So those were just some of the issues and challenges we are unpacking from the legal analysis. Our recommendations, we had a number of recommendations. I think one around the need for governments across the board to be looking at existing laws and really unpacking and seeing how they apply to deepfake image-based abuse. And if they don't, how do we then align these laws to make sure that those protections are there, and making sure as well that the laws are aligned to international human rights laws and standards, that they're adaptable to the fact that the technology is evolving, and also just making it easier for survivors to be able to use these laws to seek redress. I think, one of the key things is to just appreciate that this form of violations happens to everyday women, even though the stories that we may see a lot more in the media may relate to, celebrities and so on. But the fact that this is happening to many more women who may not have the same sort of means to be able to, access legal remedies. So I think the test will be in how we make sure that the laws are easy to use and for people to seek redress. And the point as well that there has to be, cooperation between government and the tech industry, and that we need to be looking at this in the context of multilateral international cooperation. Some of the developments at the UN level that we are involved with as Equality Now and Order is around the Global Digital Compact, and we think that could provide an opportunity for a coordinated global response, that looks at people's rights in the digital space. Yes, and just to end by saying, I think it's a multi-sector problem, and the solutions also lie across, different sectors. Yes, we need the law, but we also need other interventions, around education, support to survivors, so that we, what we end up with is more, holistic approaches. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Tsitsi, for your valuable insights. I agree that we need to, amend or create laws and standards, domestic laws and domestic regulations, so that we can better hold tech platforms accountable for their management, their content management. And now that we've heard this insightful recommendation on addressing deepfake image-based sexual abuse, let's further explore the regulatory landscape, particularly in the EU and Italy. Our next panelist, Dr. Silvia, brings expertise in EU regulation and the legal framework in Italy pertaining to deepfakes. And notably, I have to mention this, that Dr. Silvia played a very, very important role as the promoter of the Italian campaign, Intimita Violata, advocating for a law against the non-consensual sharing of intimate images. Thanks to her efforts, the campaign led to the approval of the law in Italy, criminalizing NCII. So please join me in welcoming Silvia.
Thank you very much, Soyoung. Thank you, everyone, for inviting me and for organizing such an amazing meeting. It's very exciting to finally see so many people discussing such an important topic that honestly have been around for a very long time. So I would like to start from what you were just mentioning, the Intimita Violata campaign that is dated back to 2018. So it's almost 6 years now when I started to work on this topic. Intimita Violata was a campaign that was born from a petition launched in Italy to criminalize non-consensual dissemination of intimate images. And it was a campaign that it took to the approval of a law, thanks also to some research that we did in Italy on the ground, especially on Telegram groups and chats, channel and chats at the University of Milan, because we wanted to show that the problem was so radicalized and so normalized that it ended up having groups of up to 100,000 people meeting, well, men, not just people, precisely men meeting online to sharing pictures of women without their consent. And already back in 2018-19, in Telegram, we had bots specifically created for deep nudes sharing. So already during that time of the campaign, there was an effort from the campaigners and myself to bring attention from institution to this particular use of AI to harm women. However, this phenomenon was not included in the current regulations. So the law was approved in 2019. And actually, we have a law today that criminalizes the non-consensual dissemination of intimate images. But unfortunately, nothing was said regarding deepfake abuse. So that's a pity. That was a missed occasion, for one of the first missed occasion of a long list that now I will proceed to explore together. So it's still there, but unfortunately, as in most countries, the problem has only grown in the past years, especially in the past 2 years, with the arrival of very user-friendly AI application for creating deepfake abuse. So we had like this major case in Italy that was very interesting, and I would like to mention also discussing normalization of deepfake abuse among the teenagers and young folks at large, because there was this case involving minors that created deepfake of a classmate, and that was classified by the judge as a joke among kids. So it was just rejected as a crime, and that set a standards, in my opinion, especially in a country that is very embedded with misogyny. So that's particularly worrying. At the same time, I live in Spain, so I have an eye also on another country of the south of Europe, which is Spain. Spain, I don't know if you know it, but it's one of the countries in Europe that has one of the most advanced laws on gender-based violence, because last year it was approved the KCSC, a law that one of the first law that recognized rape as sex without consent. So it sets a standard in that sense. But unfortunately, few were said regarding online gender-based violence. So there was a mention on image-based sexual abuse and the non-consensual dissemination of intimate images, but not on deepfake. And Spain, similar to Italy, last year, September 23, had a major case involving 11 minors creating deepfake abuse of their classmates. And I think there at least 30 girls were involved as victims. So that was a moment in which also in Spain, more attention was put regarding the problem of deepfake. But in neither of the two countries, there is a specific law on this. So this is just to illustrate a little bit the national situation in the country I live within, let's say. But this is useful to explore a little bit more the opportunities that we can have at European level. I want to say that right now I'm in Germany, and I'm in Germany because I'm with many people from the Reclaim Coalition. We're in the middle of a very important workshop to discuss together how to push European institutions to do more regarding image-based sexual violence, and of course the new risks posed by the artificial intelligence implementation. So what we have been seeing in the past days is especially that the European regulation is moving forward. There are some regulation that can be possibly game changers. First and foremost, what Tsitsi was already mentioning, the European Directive on Gender-Based Violence, because the European Directive will oblige national countries in the next 2 years to adopt national laws on image-based sexual abuse and deepfake. So deepfake is mentioned. So in that sense, this is good news, because it means that in Europe we will have to have a law specifically adopted for this kind of phenomenon. But at the same time, there is a problem already with the definitions of the phenomenon, because in the actual regulation, it seems that the European directive is looking especially at manipulated videos, but it's not referring specifically, for example, to deep nudes images. So what we need right now is also an effort from feminist activists and groups to push more to make recognition of all the different aspects that deepfake can take, because it's not just videos, right? It can also be images, but it can also, for example, be bias in databases for creating your own non-consensual porn, which is manipulated, but it doesn't necessarily involve a specific targeted woman. So it's quite big as a phenomenon, and right now the definition is still quite loose. Yet it can still be an opportunity, also because through this European directive, it should be better the cooperation among European countries to limit and remove image-based sexual abuse and deepfake. So in that sense, it's good news, but we still have a lot to do. And that's why we have decided to reunite among different activists and researchers and lawyers and survivors to try to see whether we can push to do more. There are other two regulations that are right now also interesting in terms of deepfake, but that somehow were some missed occasions, some missed opportunities. First and foremost, the Digital Service Act that only mention the deepfake, but unfortunately missed the opportunity to enforce the removal of sexual videos uploaded without consent. So there is not an effort on gender equality in the Digital Service Act, but in the next months there will be conversation around the enforcement of such regulations. So hopefully women and survivors will also called at the table, because this is not something that happens and we shouldn't take for granted, because normally it doesn't happen. And this is what the AI Act, for example, in my opinion, shows. The AI Act, unfortunately, has no reference to gender. So in the AI, under the proposed AI Act, deepfake providers will be subject to transparency and disclosure requirements. So, for example, stating that a content is fake, but it fails to provide the deepfake abuse victims with tools to claim justice for harm from generative AI technology. So there is no specification on the malicious use of this kind of artificial intelligence. At the same time, since we see that this is a missed opportunity, but at the same time, it can set new opportunities, because we still have job to do in that realm. So if we recognize that women should have more space in tech discussions, because the problem, honestly, is that women and survivors are not taken very seriously in this kind of debate. It seems that we are limited to the European Gender Directive on gender-based violence. It's like we discuss gender-based violence on our own, but then there are adults at the table discussing technology as if it's something that doesn't touch us, right? And that's something that it's very worrying, but at the same time, it can set political opportunities for feminists, because it will need to make our voices be heard. So that's why we are trying to send recommendations and try to get space in that debate. Because, for example, in the AI Act, there will be room to decide which legal and political entities we want to be in charge of the AI enforcement. And that, in my opinion, is when feminism can enter and access to set the standards also of the discussion. So we want to keep the optimism in that sense, to think that we still have room to do something. Just to finish and to wrap up a bit more my intervention, I just want to mention that when we discuss online gender-based violence, we need to remember what Tsitsi was also saying, and I want to take what she was saying, that the punitive approach is not enough. Of course, it's not a deterrent. Just having an hyper-proliferation of law sometimes is not efficient. We need also to work at the same time on the preventive approach. So exactly what Tsitsi was mentioning. So education, training, to those who are in charge of helping survivors, from police to judges to NGOs that right now are left alone, are very are experiencing a feeling of loneliness, of abandonment, because they lack funding, they lack attention, they lack national support. So in that sense, we really need to construct better networks to help survivors, because we cannot really forget that survivors should always be at the center of this kind of discussion, and this is not happening. So this is very important, because as a sociologist, what I can add here is that this is not a phenomenon that is just a result of patriarchal social cultural system, but it's also a result of the social cultural system and their intersection with the economical technological mechanism. So we need to look at how the result of this particular environment is also having an impact on the way women and men are constructed their identity, and especially men in their peer online context, where masculinities are radicalizing towards anti-feminism. So we can provide standardized definitions of these violent practices. We can develop research methodologies to measure better this technologically facilitated gender-based violence, and provide better reflection on the role of digital platforms in reproducing violence. And I will just end saying that we shouldn't just have a look on very large platforms, because of course they are particularly important, but very large platforms often are seen as social media, and we left aside, for example, messaging apps, or little web pages or little applications that right now are possibly where deepfake abuse and image-based abuse is mostly spread. So in that sense, I think the conversation has just started. Thank you so much for the space. I remain, of course, available for questions, and look forward to hearing the rest of the conversation.
Thank you, Dr. Silvia. Well, I can't agree more. We should definitely look into, the online platform that there is today, not just the, big tech companies that we know of. And then I wish you the best with your submission of recommendations. And I also strongly, believe that like-minded individuals and organizations and entities must remain united, as together we can drive a meaningful change. And it's my personal opinion, but I think the time has come for great inclusion of women and girls in these efforts. So now moving to our final speaker, Barsha will now share the perspective from India. Over to you, Barsha.
Thank you, Soyoung. So I just want to start with an incident which happened in 2021, where more than 100 Muslim women were auctioned on a open source app, and their photographs were all out and they were auctioned. And the app was made by these three young people, two young men. They were like of early 20s, and one woman. They all were studying engineering, and they were arrested after there was a lot of outrage, because it was not first of its kind. Before that, there was a similar thing happened, but there was not much outrage and police did not take much action. But after this, there was like a lot of outrage, and these three youth got arrested. But interestingly, they were acquitted by the court, citing that they are young and this is something they have done out of impulse. But clearly, these three people who committed this crime did not have any single remorse of this entire event, and they said that they have done right because these women are from minority religion, and these women are opinionated. They share, they express themselves on platforms like Twitter, and they have a political opinion, and they're critical of the government and the religion dominance. So they served it right. So after the entire incident, so technically, if we look at the incident, why it strikes a lot to me, because nobody got actually any punishment. the GitHub, the open source platform where the app was made, they did not have a prior policy. Though they removed that app, but they did not make any change in their internal policies. The code did not take a cognizance of the fact, and all these women who were auctioned on this app were further trolled or schooled by the well-wishers on other social media platforms like Twitter, that how they should have behaved or what they should have shared or how they should have dressed. This further humiliation and further resharing of the same content, which again further violated their privacy. So this entire incident actually also shows that how it is a hate crime, and it is just not like image-based sexual violence. There's a lot of other politics attached to it, and if you're a minority, if you're a woman of intersectionality, you are subjected to more such violence. I want to quote a statistics here, where the National Crime Record Bureau in India, they have said that there was a 110% surge in sexually explicit content from 2018 to 2020, and these are only reported cases. So you can imagine the plethora of non-reported cases where women were not even sure what they're supposed to do. So and this gets really trickier when there's this whole induction of AI into it, and this whole deepfake becomes very complicated. So coming to the legal side, in India, we do not have a particular act for AI. We have IT Act, Information Technology Act, that kind of deals with a lot of image-based sexual violence. We also, in 2023, there's an IT rule that kind of also talks about certain content moderation bit. And very recently, we have got an AI guideline, and I really want to touch upon that because it's also something, it's being highly criticized because of its nature. So this AI rule, which came like a month back, actually talks about, because we have an election coming in and there's a huge risk of using more deepfake images, and as we all are discussing, women will be facing the most of it. And this AI rule basically came in preview of this electoral context, but it also is the first legal protocol, you can say, or like a rule, you can say, which talks about deepfake. It recognized deepfake because recently, like end of last year, early this year, there was a case similar like to a Taylor Swift, where this actress image was morphed and used, and which basically made the government way more aware that, okay, the deepfake is so real. You can create deepfake images or videos so easily. Anybody can create at this point of time. So so this entire rule basically talks about how the platforms are accountable to not host or display or upload, modify, publish, transmit, share any kind of content, any kind of such unlawful content, and unlawful as per the IT Act. It also talk about like certain like source biases or source discrimination. It talks about how the AI companies who are making such AI apps to be used in India needs to get like checks and clearance at every stage from the government. And also, there's like a fact-checking unit they have established, which is going to fact check, and that basically made people more suspicious, because the way the government is investing in surveilling people, and especially people who are criticizing, or especially women who are sharing their opinion, doing pieces criticizing the government, are anyways under a lot of surveillance. So this content moderation, in the garb of content moderation, this can be more detrimental for press freedom or women into the field, especially in the politics and journalism and activists. So this deepfake rule, I mean, under the rule, they also talk about like adding certain metadata and watermark, which was also pretty much contested, saying it's something, it can be easily removed. And also, given the media literacy among the citizen, it might not make a very huge cut to differentiate between like an AI generated content and like an original content. these were like, certain basic concern what we are facing at this point of time. We at Breakthrough, we work with a lot of youth. One of our core work is to do like media literacy and making them understand the power of storytelling. We do a lot of workshops, and youth are like the biggest source for our insight and information, because we are dealing with them every day, not only training them, but understanding what kind of crisis they're going through. And I absolutely agree with all the panelists that, a survivor-centric and a survivor-informed mechanism is very, very important at this point of time, because the acts and the laws are made in isolation. A lot of time, they give a lot of leeway to the platforms. And, even if there is a consequence, like a financial consequence, there's a very minuscule fine they have to pay, and they don't care for paying those fines. And when the entire moderation becomes so much surveilled and so much heavy government, there's a chance of, this entire thing is like freedom of expression being like suppressed quite a lot. So it doesn't actually make our lives very easy. The another thing what I want to talk about, like the importance of media literacy, because that's something we think it's the way forward. And when I say media literacy, basically looking at media literacy from a very critical thinking point of view. So verification of content, no matter like what kind of content you're receiving, the means to verify those content. Whatever you're consuming, don't consume as it is. So, putting these parameters with the youth, because at times it's gets very difficult to moderate WhatsApp forwards. You can do, and people are very easily using Telegram. And in India, the digital penetration is very high in urban, rural, both the sectors. So even if you don't you own a smartphone, you still have an access, because you might be using a shared phone in your family. And another thing what we really have been advocating for a very long time, that we do have laws, already existing laws. And though there is no direct law to deal with deepfakes at this point of time, it's multiple sections are being used to, for example, for a deepfake case, for example, theft of personality, thefts, then the other laws attached to sexual exploitation, other laws attached to pornographic content. So there's this like multiple sections being added to a case, which might make the case even more trickier, since there is no any direct action. And with the law, there is a huge need to improve the redressal mechanisms, the institutions, put up institutions, because often this happens that even if a survivor is reaching out to the police do not know what to do about it, or do not know how to handle the cases. So often they are referred to. So as per law, wherever you face a crime, you can go and lodge an FIR. But many a times the survivor is asked to basically go from the police station towards different cyber cell, and then cyber cell to the police station. So there is no clear direction, and often that is how survivor also loses interest in pursuing such cases, and the number of cases gets dropped. So yes, putting like a very strong mechanism. I think the laws are still there, but those mechanisms are missing. So no matter what kind of revolution we try to bring in law, if you don't have those mechanisms, it's not going to work. So yeah, I mean, these are certain key points I wanted to mention. Thank you.
Thank you, Barsha, for providing insights from India. Yeah, I want to echo your emphasis on media literacy and education, because as Barsha and our panelists have highlighted earlier, the technology now has become immensely powerful and accessible, yet it remains largely unregulated. And this lack of regulation has facilitated like the widespread abuse of deepfake technology, leading to significant harm over the years. So so it was really fascinating to observe how, and yes, to me personally, it was really fascinating to observe like how similar issues are occurring globally, India, in Korea, in Europe, in Africa, highlighting the widespread misuse of technology and the urgent need to raise awareness about the negative and harmful impact of image-based sexual abuse. So Yeah, so thank you to all our speakers for your enlightening insights. So now I kind of wanted to open the floor for a discussion, but as I see no questions coming from the floor, why don't we, wrap up our discussion today? I want to express like sincere gratitude to our panelists today for your invaluable insights, from Tsitsi Matekaire's thorough study to Dr. Silvia Semenzin's analysis of EU regulation, Italy's legal framework, and Barsha's perspective from India. I think we've gained a profound understanding of the challenges posed by, deepfake in technology. So as we move forward, let's continue collaborating and advocating for, comprehensive legal framework to combat this issue of deepfake image-based sexual abuse, and safeguard, the rights of everybody, all individuals. So now I want to invite each panelist to share a brief closing remark, starting with Tsitsi. Tsitsi, over to you.
Yeah, thanks so much. I think it's really been an interesting discussion, as you say, to hear the commonalities across, regions and internationally, within countries and so on. I just wanted to maybe emphasize a point that others have made around, yes, you can have the laws, but you need to ensure that the institutions that implement the laws understand the issues from a survivor perspective. And I think also within that, we also need to be really looking at the broader, cultural norms that commodify women, fetishize women, and just this rise of misogyny online, which then just creates, these opportunities. So I think as we think about solutions, I think the prevention and the response are both important. Yeah, thank you.
Over to you, Silvia.
Yes. So I will also wrap up saying something similar. Also, maybe since I've seen that there is a question, I will take the advantage to also briefly reply to that question, which is what kind of international cooperation we envision. And I think what I envision is especially an international cooperation that starts from feminist theory again, and from intersectional feminist theory, which is why I am also particularly excited about being part of this panel and hearing from such interesting and enlightening perspective from all around the world, different regions and different experiences, because we also need to acknowledge that survivors can also have different experience according to their identities, and this is very important when we promote laws and ask for laws. And finally, yes, we need more laws. Possibly we need the ad hoc laws for new risk posed by artificial intelligence, but I strongly agree with the idea that we also need more political will. We need class actions, and we need pressure from bottom-down groups formed by survivors' experiences. So hopefully this is what we are creating together in the sense. So thank you again for having me, and it was a pleasure to meeting you all.
I think few of my closing remark will be to look beyond social media platforms, because whenever we talk about content, we kind of stick to social media platforms. But I think it's important to look beyond social media platform, that how data privacy are being practiced in platforms like health, where the data is being collected and how it's being used. I think we should have more such awareness and more conversation about, talking about their policies, those app platforms policies, and how that is ensuring gender and dealing with gender-based violence. I think, as everybody said, I totally believe in a very intersectional and survivor-informed approach in building any form of guideline, rules, or law. It's very important that we listen to the survivors, the government listens to the survivor, and try to do justice, and not merely do like, okay, AI is like a buzzing word, so we have to use AI in like, policies, and we have to come up with something, but it should have like by the right intent. And the third thing, again, I think I want to reinforce the point of media literacy, because it's very, very important, because today is deepfake, tomorrow something else is going to come up. So it's very, very important that we understand the fundamentals, we talk with the youth, with the vulnerable communities, women, girls, especially from the intersectional background, having lesser access and control over these devices. So it's very important that globally we start thinking, and especially for global south, if we can have like a larger understanding of the situation, like a global south audit, gender audit, and where we are with different kind of platforms and app, and to understand and then form certain things in global south. Because as we have very clearly came out from this panel discussion, that we have so much similar problems where we have laws but lesser implementation or no structure. So I mean, it's very important at this point of time to create that global south conversation, and bring these issues for larger support, both funding and resources. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. I think, Dr. Sylvia and other panelists kind of touch on to answer the question that was given to us, but to answer to the question of, what types of international cooperation that we envision, that I, briefly want to introduce KCSC efforts involved with the global coalitions like Reclaim, as well as Online Safety Regulators Network. As we all know, Reclaim is a survivor-driven global coalition to address, to specifically address this issue of image-based sexual abuse. And Online Safety Regulators Network is a network of, 7 online safety regulators across the world, including KCSC from South Korea, Ofcom in UK, eSafety in Australia. So and then we are continuing to gather together so that we can, share information and, knowledge and experiences across borders, and so that we can finally, standardize law or and collaborate on law enforcement efforts, and, to lead the change around the world. So hopefully that can answer some of the questions. So yeah, thank you everyone for the participation for today. If it's okay, I will close today's session. Thank you. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you.